I'm interested, and I'd like to bring a series of messages, but I'll probably not be able to get to it for a long time anyway. If I do, it'll be a message or two, and that's all, on the subject of interpretation. We know that hermeneutics is a very important subject. And you can't even study the subject of the kingdom without getting into hermeneutics. That's interpretation. Interpretation is the work of man. I'm sure you understand. It's the work of man. I've been trying to think for a long time of a good illustration to bring together the subject of interpretation. You remember I've been appealing to you for some time to read the Bible, to become acquainted with the Scriptures, all the major events, the major persons, like the major characters of the Old Testament, the major events, and then in the New Testament, become acquainted with the Scriptures. I was reading a man the other day, and he called my attention to it. In fact, it was Richard Belcher. I was reading a little booklet that he sent along with those books that we ordered from him on the Greek. I was looking at it, and he said, my advice to every young Christian is to read the Bible, read the Bible, read the Bible. And he kept stressing it. Learn the Bible. Get a knowledge of the Bible. The things that I've been appealing to you about and saying to you for a long time. He said, do those things before you ever get into interpretation. Do those things before you ever get into the Greek. And he's a Greek professor. In other words, become acquainted with the Scriptures. So thinking about this, the other morning I was walking, and sometimes we're really in the mornings from 5 until 6 o'clock while we're walking. Juanita and I don't talk too much unless I think of something I'll share with her, or she thinks of something and she shares with me. But your mind is fresh and many things come together while I'm walking, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it immensely. And I miss it when I can't do it. But the thought came to me, all of us are familiar with a jigsaw puzzle. Now, when I was a kid at home, even though they had probably jigsaw puzzles in those days, and I'm talking now about 65 years ago or 60 to 65 years ago, but of course we didn't buy anything like that. You only bought the necessities of life, and those of you who went through the Great Depression, you know what I'm talking about. But after Richard came along, after we adopted Richard, of course we would buy him everything we could think of, and I'd try to get him things that I couldn't get. In fact, when he was about 2.5 years old, I bought him a train. Does that say anything for you? And some of you men who had only girls and you didn't feel like buying your daughter a train, but I always wanted a train, so I bought Richard a train when he was about 2.5. And so you do a lot of things for your children that you didn't do and you couldn't get when you were a child. But think about a jigsaw puzzle for a moment. Now, in order to put a jigsaw puzzle together, and I used to work them with Richard, I enjoyed it. Whenever you bought a puzzle, there's always a picture on the outside box of what's inside. Remember what I'm talking about? So that came to my mind as a good illustration. So the more you study that picture, the easier it is to put that puzzle together. You find one with a little color, maybe with 2 colors on it. And if you really get the picture in mind, I mean the whole picture in mind, then it is a lot easier to put each one of those pieces in its proper place. And if you don't do that, if you just start off cold turkey, and you don't know anything about the picture, but here are just a lot of pieces, say several hundred pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, all you got to look for those little curly cues and see if it'll fit, and it doesn't fit. But if you get the better view one gets of the picture, the easier it is to put the puzzle together. Now, you know what I'm going to say? The more you know about the Scriptures, the easier it becomes to interpret the Scriptures properly. And don't waste your time trying to interpret something to someone who doesn't have any basic knowledge of biblical things. So, folks, I still appeal to people. Learn the book. Learn the major events, the major biblical doctrines. Have them in your mind. Then when you take a piece, one verse of Scripture, you think of that picture, as it were, on that. In other words, just put yourself in the position of a piece of the puzzle. Take one piece of the puzzle and say, this is the verse. Where does it fit? If you have a good view of the picture on the outside of that box, it'll be easier to put it together. And folks, that's interpretation. And when you put it in its right place, it fits everything and everything fits to it. I don't know of a better illustration than that to illustrate biblical interpretation.